Well, thanks, Les. There's some pretty thought-provoking stuff there, certainly touching on the human factors in organisational learning. My name's Dave Stewart. I'm the co-chair of the Human Factors Group and now the Human Factors and Competence Group. So it's, Les approached me a couple of months ago and said, we're thinking of combining the human factors with the competence work group. And I thought, well, I represent an organisation with 10,300 employees in the UK. 6,000 of them are offshore. So Les just said we've got 60,000 offshore people, 10% of them work for me. I think I've got about 40% of the client base. So being part of Step Change and being part of Competence Human Factors is just where I need to be. There's so much opportunity for me as an organisation to learn. But one of the things I always say is in many of our sites, our people work under what we'd call the duty holders management system arrangements, their culture. So my part of the bargain, and one of the things I'm quite sort of reputed to often say to our clients is, if I can show up with competent people who behave in the right manner and work under your good, safe systems of work, then that's a really good foundation. So being part of this is just where I want to be. So the next steps in human factors. In 2010, there was a document published called Human Factors and how to take the first steps. That document had some expectations within it. And one of the expectations for managers and senior leaders like myself was to appoint human factors champions, develop human factors plans, and also to engage with our workforce and get feedback. How successful has that been? I look around the room and, I maybe ask for a show of hands here. How many people recognise in their own organisations their human factors champions and their human factors plans in place? Show of hands. Yeah, not that surprising. So embedding a document is extremely difficult. So next steps is really about how do we take that to the next sort of level to kind of make it real. So what we've tried to do here is, today is a bit of a special day. Today is the official launch of this Next Steps tool. And the Next Steps tool is to actually take good principles and help people and organisations to embed their principles and integrate them into their business across the many topics that are identified as having human factor influence. So it's a journey. It's taken about 18 months to develop the tool, so quite complex to develop it. I guess I could say that I have one advantage. If you're not the most cleverest guy in the world, simplicity is where you focus your energy. So if I look on, I think Les just gave a very a good example of how tough organisational learning can be. And clearly, these topics were identified by the sort of UK Health and Safety Executive working in conjunction with the industry. So there wasn't something just a bunch of work group people made up. A lot of this is knowledge-based, research-based and good foundation stuff. So I'm going to tell a couple of stories that kind of relate to me personally and touch on a couple of subject matters. I won't touch on organisational learning because I think Les has given a great presentation on just how difficult that can be. I'll talk a lot about human factors and design. This is a story that can illustrate the point for me. And it doesn't just talk to human factors and design. It also talks about incident management and competence and various other topics here. About 7 years ago, I was tasked with bringing the first circular FPSO into the North Sea and operating it on behalf of venture production. It was a unit that was designed by a company called Savan Marine, who were kind of used to designing equipment and vessels in the Norwegian sector. It's a very NORSOC focused. And Wood Group at that time was appointed as the operator and duty holder. This was quite novel, and as it was the first circular FPSO, so there was a lot of attention from the regulator. It was quite sort of pioneering, and we were bringing together a kind of new team in Wood Group's first venture to be an operator in its own right. So quite a lot of challenges there, and one of the challenges in the design that we recognised early was the level control on separators in floating production, with the potential for movement, the potential for sand build-up in separators. And we had recommended an already a mature design that we install nucleonic level control, which was a non-invasive level control, because we had a lot of experience of where we had bridle type, mag follower type level control instrumentation. We had regular blockages and we had to intervene to maintain, so we felt that this was a far better and a far safer design. But the design was mature, the field was 2.5 years long, the investment was too much, so we kind of convinced ourselves, and we got this resistance to go with the existing design. It's tried and tested, it's proven, it's only going to be there for 2 years. We'll maybe upgrade it in the next phase when it goes to the next field. And all of these are good reasons why we didn't change the design, which we had the time to do. It was just really down to the cost. So we went with it. It was fairly successful, but fast forward a couple of years, there was one evening where one of our technicians was alerted by the control room with a level control problem on the first stage separator. So the technician was asked to go out and check the bridle, blow it down, which was clearly against our operating procedures. It was hydrocarbon containment breach, which should have been covered by a cold work permit. It was at night, in the middle of the night, and there was a lone working policy for night working. There was many things going on there. So the technician duly went out on site, climbed a ladder with a bucket in one hand and a spanner in the other. Only had 1 point of contact on the ladder when our rules say we've got 3 points of contact. So there was many things going on here. And he attempted to blow down the bridle. He took the plug off, the valve was passing, there was a large amount of oil released that kind of shocked him, and he fell off the ladder. Luckily he wasn't that badly injured, but he was a little bit stunned, and the fire and gas system picked up the hydrocarbon release and shut the platform down. So my kind of story is, if you think in the overall sort of barrier model, what was the root cause of that problem? There was many root causes. But clearly human factors in design and human factors in terms of culture and compliance were playing heavily there. But had we designed that properly in the first place, with the knowledge we had, we could have got it right. That's one story, and it's a story I'm not particularly proud of. Another story is, in Wood Group, we just to illustrate a couple of points about how difficult some of this stuff is. In Wood Group and Wood Group PSN, we've been running behavioural safety programmes for many years now. So that kind of focuses on the behavioural safety element. All too often we talk of human factors in the space of behavioural safety. Now, I think, as Martin and Les illustrated earlier, that human factors covers many topics. We've got 15 listed here. So it's not just about behavioural safety, but behavioural safety is reasonably mature in the UKCS. However, it is a bit complicated. There is many behavioural safety intervention programmes with many acronyms. At Wood Group PSN, we run a couple that are our own, but probably 10 years into the journey, they're still not embedded where we need them to be because of things like resistance and organisational resistance and people resistance. But there's a couple of little things we do is, I'll focus on one little program we have. It's called Aristos. And the principles of Aristos is based on the ABC principles. Is to try and get people thinking into safe habits. I guess if I gave an example of what is a safe habit, it's probably the most obvious one is fastening your seatbelt. And I think us people at my age would recognise the old Jimmy Savile clunk click every trip, but there's another. Let's not get into a Jimmy Savile story today, but you know, that clunk click every trip was embedded into the psyche of the whole UK population. So habitually, you know, when you're in the process of driving a car, you know, one of the first things you do when you get in the car is you habitually fasten your seatbelt. So the title Aristos comes from Aristotle, the Greek philosopher. Here the quote is, "We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence then is not an act, but a habit." So I'm going to reflect on another personal story about safe habits. And this is a story that happened 25 years ago, just as Emily was coming into the world, and just as Les was going offshore. But at that time, I was already a seasoned professional of offshore industry and had 10 years under my belt. And I was a supervisor on the North Cormorant. And not quite proud of this story, but I have the humility to tell it, but it was a moment in my life. And what actually happened was I had a work team working on a gas compressor. Doing some fairly routine work. They were changing a seal on a flooded seal gas compressor. Which was quite a complex job, but fairly simplistic in its nature, and not routine as such, but it didn't get, you know, it wasn't too technically difficult a job. So at that time, my whole thought process around being an offshore supervisor was being technically clever. It was about knowing how to do the job back to front, and with, you know, and being very technically competent. It wasn't really so much about managing the safety of my team. So, you know, to cut a long story short, is what actually happened was my team ended up working on the wrong compressor, the one that wasn't isolated. Therefore, I had a work team working on a piece of live plant for several hours. And it happened on shift handover, so I was busy. You know, I was a supervisor, I was writing my handover notes and a bit too busy to attend the toolbox talk and get out in the plant. And a breakdown in communication resulted in people working on the wrong plant. So breakdown in planning, the toolbox talk between the performing authority and the area authority happened in the control room, not at the work site. And through a communication breakdown, people ended up working on the wrong plant. So there was a big post-mortem and investigation went on, but I kind of reflected then. I come off the platform the following day, feeling a bit low after getting through the ringer at 2 o'clock in the morning with the OIM and the investigation team. And then I actually went on holiday the next day for 2 weeks to Tenerife. It wasn't the best holiday I ever had, I have to say, because I kind of thought about this many times during the holiday. And on reflection, I thought, what is this? You know, what could I have done to present that, to actually prevent that incident from occurring? And the simplicity of it was easy for me, because what I said and what I committed to then was, I will never supervise another job without me personally being present at the toolbox talk, which was an important part of the whole safety management process, but something I never complied with because I thought I knew better. And from that day forward, for the next 10 years offshore, I always attended the toolbox talk. So if I give people advice today is, when you're out on site, when you're working on the work sites, is, you know, if your area authority and your performing authority is not there at your toolbox talk at the work site as opposed to in the tea shack, then don't do it, and have the courage not to do it. So make it a habit. So that's a kind of story about myself and a couple of key areas why this is important. So, okay, moving on. This is a quote from Professor James Reason. He's an eminent psychologist from Manchester University. He's accredited with the development of the Swiss cheese model. We often see the Swiss cheese model or the barrier model in the asset integrity world, so we're doing a bit of joined up thinking today when we see this embedded in human factors. So human rather than technical failures now represent the greatest threat to complex and potentially hazardous systems. Never a truer word spoken. He is a wise man. So I really want to illustrate there, this slide just really illustrates the barrier model. The barrier model is broad on this, but it breaks into these sort of fundamental components of plant processes and people. And if you can see here, clearly the alignment of what the human factors first step document addresses and how that ties into the barrier model and how that ties into overall integrity and safe operations. So it's just an illustration that kind of depicts how it's joined up. Now, so why is all this stuff important? You know, why are we doing any of this? Now, you know, I'm not embarrassed to highlight a couple of these major accidents that's occurred in previous years. This list could go on and on and on. You can read the words for yourself, but you know, Piper Alpha, last year was the 25th anniversary of Piper Alpha. I actually went offshore on the Savannah Hummingbird to do a live tribute to Piper Alpha. It was quite a reflective day, but one of the reporters was going to ask me on television, live television, what's changed since Piper Alpha? And I said, no, you can't ask me that. I said, because I've just attended a 3-day conference with over 1,000 delegates talking about what's changed since Piper Alpha, and I've only got 30 seconds to answer it. So please don't ask me that question. It is far too complex. But this is really why this stuff's important. But, you know, this is kind of highlighting the major accidents. But human factors, you know, keeps a, you know, I think I can honestly say that I've never been involved in an incident investigation that doesn't involve human factors. So, in the occupational space, as well as the major accident space, human factors is vitally important. So, I'm a great believer, on to the kind of next steps of why did we develop a tool? There's a picture there of William Edwards Deming. Deming was accredited, was the creator of total quality maintenance. That used to be a bit all the rage. It's probably been surpassed a little bit now by things like ISO 9001 and Lean and Six Sigma. But he was an eminent American engineer, and his this fundamental is you can't manage what you don't measure. So we really developed a tool as a measurement tool, and it's as simple as that. So if you can measure something, then you can improve it. And it's such a simple principle. So we've got a session today. We've got a work group breakout session to illustrate how this tool actually works. So pretty simple, again, simple principle of what we're doing and why we do it. So what the measurement tool is really about is a health check. It's measuring organisations, individuals and site and assets performance against the principles within First Steps. And it's quite as simple as that. It just asks a question set around this. Now, it's fairly immature. It's an 80-20 solution at this stage. And you know, if people adopt it and use it, then we'll see the power of it. My own view is it's it's best used by organisations, because there's nothing better than a debate and a discussion and with a cross-section of inputs from the workforce, from safety reps, from engineers, from managers, from supervisors. I think that's where you'll get the value. However, the tool is so flexible, it can be used at individual level. So, you know, for example, if an individual is tasked with writing a local procedure, he can refer to the tool and assess his own procedure against not only the company standards, but against the human factors guidelines. So it's pretty flexible, and it's so simplistic. It's, you know, it's just taking that sort of little bit of technology and sort of joining the dots, if you like. So my plea to everyone is to use it. I'll certainly be using it. I mean, you know, this is not an unwanted gift. This is a real gift. You know, step change members get this for nothing. Apart from the membership fee, of course, which we get,
which is almost nothing.
which is almost nothing. But in the case of organisations our size, it's not insignificant. However, you know, I really think that, you know, for organisations and for individuals, you know, this is a gift. If you use it, very simple. You know, if you focus on something, you can improve it. This is just a tool to help you measure that. So, I'll give you a quick overview of what the tool looks like. So, again, it's an electronic tool. It's available on the web. It's kind of designed to draw people to the problem, therefore identifying the potential solutions. This is bridging the gap from where we are to where we need to be. So it's very, very simple. You just answer a series of questions. I say the benefit is if you answer the questions as a team, as opposed to an individual, I think you'll get more benefit from it. So it's very, very simple. The feedback is instantaneous. So you get a traffic light feedback, and again, for the sake of simplicity, and please forgive me for using that word, but I mean, this is the whole principle. So if you're in the red, you've got loads of room for improvement. If you're in the green, you're doing pretty well. So, and the feedback's instant. So it's the other thing about the kind of tool is it signposts you to the solution. So it's not actually giving you the answers, but it's telling you where your gaps are, and it signposts you to the potential answers and any additional information you need. So that's just a kind of screenshot of what next in terms of you know, the next steps you take. That's a kind of output of the you know, what you'll see in terms of your scoring. Clear identification of strengths and weaknesses. You know, pretty easy to understand. Green's good, red's bad. You know, and it's all about, you know, continuous improvement. If you use this tool and use it effectively, I mean, my view is that you should maybe pick a couple of topics where you think you're weak, home in on them, run the assessment and come up with a plan. So the kind of output from the tool is to develop into your improvement plans is a kind of human factors section and of clear identifiable plans. So that kind of ties back to the commitments that's suggested and the expectations that's suggested back to this document. You know, whether you assign a champion, whether you're a large enough organisation to think you need a champion, is kind of irrelevant. I think you know, as organisations, we have to recognise that there's room for human failing, and we have to address it. So however you address it is kind of up to you. The guidance is there, the tool's there, the help is there, Man, I can only urge you to use it, and hopefully you'll like what you see today. So summarising on that, it's a build on the first steps. It's just a continuation of the journey, but you can see it's taken us 4 years to get from a document to a tool. This journey is a long, hard road, and it's a journey we need to keep focused on. So it's simplistic in its assessment. It's most effective if used by organisations and sites as opposed to individuals, but use it as you see fit. If you're a very small organisation, then maybe it's better used by individuals. It promotes workforce engagement, which is a key objective of step change. We've developed the workforce engagement tool. This actually just promotes workforce engagement. I actually think that when you work together, then you build relationships. So, I mean, I think it's key that you involve your workforces in the assessment process. And please, do something with the output. Build it into your plans. Don't just let it be learning. I think Les made a great point there. It's not just about learning, it's about implementation. And build it into your plans, and good luck. Okay, so that's it from me, so I'll hand you back to Les. Thanks, everyone.